Transition derives from some changes that were put into the 1997 IDEA.
It's a concerted planning effort. It's a collaboration with parents, with agencies, with institutions of higher education.
When you're talking about individuals with developmental disabilities, it requires creative thinking.
I think there is sometimes barriers when schools do not see the bigger picture.
Just being successful in a classroom does not make one successful in life.
We talk about what their dreams and aspirations are. Where do you see yourself working in a year or two?
Encourage internships.
You have to be committed with time and money.
One of the most critical periods in a young person's life is when he or she leaves high school and embarks on post-secondary education or work. The challenges for typical students are many, but for young adults with disabilities, it can be incredibly daunting. Over the past few decades, educators and disability specialists have worked hard to better prepare these young adults for this life-changing experience. Indeed, federal laws such as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, the No Child Left Behind Act, and the Rehabilitation Act all require schools and disability rehabilitation agencies to take active steps to help ease this transition. I'm Gary O'Brien, Chair of the New York State Commission on Quality of Care and Advocacy for Persons with Disabilities, which is proud to co-sponsor this educational series with the New York State Bar Association and with generous financial support from the New York State Bar Foundation. Today's show, entitled Transitioning from School to Work, highlights the issues around this very important time in a person's life. In this show, you will hear from school administrators, teachers, and transition coordinators who will share with you their experiences, both positive and negative, in attempting to meet the real educational needs of their students. You will also hear from several young adults with disabilities themselves, as well as their parents, advocates, and public interest attorneys who share their experiences and perspectives as to the importance and current status of transitional services in their own lives and that of disabled students in general. I hope you enjoy the show.
Transition is the planning for students to move from their high school education, their whole education, into the world of higher education and/or work. It's a concerted planning effort. It's a collaboration with parents, with agencies, with institutions of higher education to create the greatest opportunity for success as a student leaves the world of school, public education, and moves on into adult life. It is. I'm not sure it should be as different as it is. I think there are a lot of similarities. The differences are more related to the nature of a student's disability. A student, for example, with a relatively mild learning disability, the transition may be very similar to what a typical student, a student without disabilities, may have in working with guidance counselors, working with college application processes, and so forth. Probably the more severe a student's disability, and depending on the nature of the disability, the process of transition is likely to be more complicated and involve more individuals.
Transition derives from some changes that were put into the 1997 IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, in recognition basically of about 10 years worth of research showing that providing good transition services led to much better outcomes for kids. And it created a requirement that essentially adds to the planning requirements of the IEP, that for kids who are 16 to 21, that the IEP team has to sit down and ideally the way it should work is really talk with the child, gather information, look at the child's strengths and weaknesses, be talking to the educators, and as a team figure out where this child is heading and what educational services are needed to allow them to get there. And what that should mean is that the IEP starts to become a document that coordinates all of the services, not only the sort of regular educational services a child needs, but the services they're going to need to transition from school to life after school. An example of that might be that you're sitting down, you're talking to a child who is not too good at academics, is having trouble with their reading, but they really do seem to have a knack for, say, auto mechanics, or to be stereotypical. And I have seen programs, not in New York City, but I have seen programs where you would then sort of you would use their interest in automotive work to help them that would be where they do their reading. They would read, they'd work on reading manuals, because that's going to be what they're going to have to read, and you test their comprehension on things like that. You would incorporate it into their math. I mean, you'd look at where they want to head, at least in a pretty general sense, and figure out what skills they need to be able to get there. And maybe you don't focus on teaching them calculus if they don't need calculus, but you do make sure at a minimum that they have the skills that they need to fulfill their career goals.
The student and I sit down with the transitional people at the high school, and we talk about what their dreams and aspirations are. Where do you see yourself working in a year or two? What do you need to get to that goal? And I try to set up things accordingly so they could reach that goal, whatever it takes, whether it's additional training, additional job supports, going out into the community and knocking on more than one door so they get experience at, let's say, several different welders instead of just one. And you just keep plugging away until it works.
What happens with the level 1 assessment, really, it's just a really simple procedure where the student and their parents sit down and they fill out this little form that talks about what do they like to do at home, what kind of chores do they have, what kind of hobbies, or what do they do with their free time, how they see themselves, where they think they want to be when they leave high school, and their special ed teacher fills out something like that, and 2 of their general ed teachers. So instead of the student coming to the high school to their 9th grade teacher and all you get are a lot of test scores and how they're doing in math and reading and writing, sort of a one-shot academically, you get kind of a photo album of the student.
For the most part, people that work in schools are very narrowly focused on making sure that youngsters have cognitive skills and build their cognitive skills to the maximum extent possible. A tired phrase, think outside the box. You can't follow a prescribed plan. Many people have asked me, can I give them a template for a good transition plan? I say a good transition plan has no template because it's based upon individual needs and preferences, and every single person is different.